I love how hot this conversation is. It's hot. I could carry on and carry on, specifically, regarding this health conversation that we're having. However, I do want us to touch on the other two conversations to make sure that they also get equal time in terms of how we go into them. So the other one is SMME and financing, right? SMME and financing, we had the People's Fund, which was here. We had a UN representative as well, which works with SMMEs. We had someone from the Yes Initiative as well, who works with SMMEs. And the most interesting thing for me was what CEO Leander just said. And I'll give this to anybody that what he said is that there's not a lack of funds, but there's a lack of fundable businesses. Sure. What do you guys think about that?
I think linked to stuff that he said about employment and all of that, I was just caught by an article about certain businesses that are going to be closing down, and also certain chains that are closing down certain branches and stuff. And this may not answer your question, but it's just something that keeps me up at night, is that I worry about how small the middle class is, right? And how much is so dependent on the middle class. And then linked to education, I worry about the kind of, never mind access to education, the quality, strategic thinking, for you to be able to have that critical way of thinking. It's something that if you don't get your education right between 0 to 5, which is that critical age where your mind is developing, you're literally sort of like a robot. You rehearse things, you don't. So for me, fundable businesses is linked to innovation, because certain companies are closing down because they are being forced out of business because of more creative businesses. Look at how Amazon in the US is closing down retailers. How do governments then respond to that? And then it has a knock-on effect, because at school, are we teaching the right things for this kind of economy that we want to create, for these kind of fundable businesses, for people to even conceive them? That's why, like, when I look at the US, for all its faults, having companies like Apple start up, Microsoft, that kind of thing, it's kind of like, that's what I wish for this country. For someone, and I'm sure the ideas are there, but then it comes back to, where are those people? Are we finding them? Are they articulating the idea well? It's something that just stresses me out. Like when I wake up in a sweat at night, it's like, oh my god, the middle class needs to grow, because we need to have more branches of this. I mean, this one building had 5 coffee shops, and I remember saying to my friend, give it a year, most of these coffee shops are going to close down. We don't have enough of a middle class to have 5 coffee shops. But
it's innovation. We need to groom and grow innovative young people. If I had to see another car wash, Kokazi, and another Spatu, and another Chisanyama, I'm gonna throw, I'm telling you.
It's better than nothing.
It is better than nothing, but it's not sustainable, because I've seen so many of these small businesses open up and close. And also, let's be realistic about it. If I'm moneyed, I'm not gonna throw away my money down the drain. I want something which I can invest in, and it can give me something back. So you need to bring something to the table that is out of this world. So
what is that? What is a fundable? What's a fundable business to you?
A business that will generate funds for the country. Because it's bigger than me. It's bigger than me. You come to me, you show me a model that will say, I will employ 5 more people. So that means 5 more families are fed.
Yes.
You see, so it boils down to that.
And there's growth. There's
it's growth. And it's back to education. When you go to the rural of the places, it's not even about that people don't have money to go to school. People don't have information. Information doesn't get to people out there. While I'm sitting, I'm on my Twitter, I'm on my Facebook, right? I'm on the internet. It's just there, the click of a button. There's no internet. Whenever I go home, I'm from Mama's Club. Whenever I go home, I struggle with internet. So which means going on the internet, it's a mission for me.
It's expensive.
So that's why we even said this year, me and a group of guys, we said, okay, we start to call principals of the high schools to say, okay, from March until June, we'll be visiting your high school. So this week we'll just go there. I'll take my home printer. My friends will take their laptops, we'll take Wi-Fi routers, we'll buy fast mail, and we'll sit in a high school. Rural high school, and say, make a queue. What do you want to be? Have you researched it? Do you know what that is? Do you know how?
Why do you want to be there?
Why do you want to be there? Once you say that and say, do you know which universities or colleges or technicons can give you such skills? Once you can answer that, would say, sit down, let's Google, let's apply online for you. You don't have internet at home, I've got it. Okay. Do we need to do it manually? Let's print it. Let's pass mail. Go home. Let's pay that 250 rands of registration. Until we have such initiatives, more of them, a lot of people will be left behind.
Can I add something that for me, my dream equivalent of that visit that you're doing, I want to raise money for overseas travel for kids. I have a friend who does it. She does it with the red chili hot, what's
red
the
chili peppers?
Red hot chili peppers.
Yes.
So I think I found
I know you know the red hot chili.
Yes.
I know I always get it mixed up, but anyway, they bring kids across, and just not just like South African kids over there. I just know they brought a group in December, and some go to London, some come to wherever in Africa, wherever in South America, whatever. But a lot of people may think that's frivolous. But when you think about expanding your mind, I've always said that I would rather my children, when I have them one day, they go to a public school that I can afford, but that's good. Spend most of my money having them travel. Because I feel like you need to also see it. You need to see that your world is bigger than Hammanskraal. That it's bigger than that rural area. It even starts with just bringing kids to Joburg and lining up a program where they go and sit at Discovery. Like, ask the
That's what I
founders,
did.
how did you start? That's amazing.
Yes, I said to my nephew, I said, you know what, I've realized one thing, and my friend as well. Sometimes it's the area. You need to get out. You need to get out there and see your peers. What are they doing?
Exposure.
And it will force you and motivate you to do something.
Like there were videos running around. I'll close this off and then I'll give this to my co-host to ask on the next conversation. But there were videos running around of these little kids. You know when the first day of school and the reporters are like asking the kids in grade 1, what do you want to be? And people are laughing at it. We were laughing at it on social media, or people were laughing at it. When a grade 1 would be asked, like a black grade 1 kid would be asked, what do you want to be? And then the one was like, I just want to be a man.
Indoor.
And then, yes, indoor. And then the other one was like, I just want to be human. You know how when black people sometimes say, or black parents will be like, work hard so that you become Ubuntu, and for me, I found that troubling because, it shows there hasn't even been a real conversation as to the different things that a young person can become.
Or sometimes a suppression of the thing that the kid wants to be.
Sorry. And also, it's because, sorry, I know time is not us, but it's because of, that child said, I want If you look at the parent, how educated is the parent, how exposed was the parent? Just this week I was watching a Facebook of this 8-year-old, he looks 8, and he's talking about business. He's talking about finances. He says, I want to finance another person, and I don't want to borrow him, but I want the profits to come back. And if I borrow him, all my money is gonna come back. But if I invest in his business, it will always give me money at the end of the month. He's 8 years old, and I'm thinking, chances are this boy, his father or his mom runs a business. You understand? So we go back to Soshanguve. My neighbor is a teacher, and she tells me a child came to school with savannah in a bottle, in the school bottle. So the parents said, bread, bologna, and savannah, go. And then they found, the other day they said, teacher, this boy is telling me about sex. And then, what do you know about sex? Only to find out they stay in one room shack. The boyfriend and the mom, they have sex in front of the child, already is exposed. When they drink at night while they're chilling, they give a child savannah to drink savannah. What do you think that child will talk about?
That's so sad.
It is sad. The things that we face, they're very sad. You see, so you cannot expect that child to be telling you about businesses and profit margins and investment. Obviously, that child will tell you, I want to be a taxi driver.
Can't end like this, Tamakuni. We have to
No, definitely.
give us a high note.
No, there is a high note, but what I'm getting from the conversation is that there's lack of access, right? And maybe that's what makes these SMMEs unfundable, right? There's lack of access. from all spheres. So whether it's from the NYDA not knowing how to actually come up with a good model to help businesses, right? We know the NYDA is problematic by itself, but then lack of access. When Ulanda was saying, what about exposure? Our kids can't be exposed because
just even saying
they
from
are
a
not,
crash syllabus is not even
some kids don't even go to the beach until they get to 16, 17 years old, right? It's all about lack of access, and I think that that's the main thing that's working against, yes, SMMEs, but also just it just contributes to a wide range of topics that we need to unpack and unravel in a later conversation. But moving on to our that's our last conversation.
It's our last conversation.
And this conversation for me was a very emotional one, right? And I'm going to start off the bat with a question that you might not be expecting, Kanya. But when we did the LGBT conversation, we had 2 different episodes packed into one, right? First episode, we had Beastie here, we had Sia Kumalo who had written the book.
You Have to Be
Gay to Know God. I'm sorry, I love that book. You Have to Be Gay to Know God. And then we also had Cam and Kanya speaking about their experiences as gay men in South Africa. But you guys didn't have the conversation, the real conversation, until after the conversation,
yes.
Right? What was so uncomfortable? What made you guys uncomfortable? Was it telling your truth? Was it the fact that you guys were scared of how people would be receptive to the conversation? Is that obviously the stigma is still there, but what made you guys not open up in the first conversation that we had to candidly just sit around and watch you guys speak until I said to Nguli, that's the moment. This is the moment. They're not expecting us to have eyes on them. They're honest now. Take it now. You know, what was that uncomfortability? What happened?
Yeah, I think more than anything, so the actual conversation which you guys saw was the candid conversation.
Yeah.
And interestingly, it's our most watched conversation.
Yes.
You know, and the numbers continue to grow on that particular conversation. But I don't know, I think for me, I don't think it was a matter of people as such. I think it was just warming up to the conversation. I think it's the one conversation where I wanted it, and I think you as well, we wanted it to really be as real as possible, and to be as human as possible as well, because of the dehumanization of just LGBTQI bodies. So we wanted it to be so real. But I think in the beginning of the conversation, when it was all of us, it was just a matter of us warming up. And I think as well, there's something about, just forgetting the cameras there. And that happened when, you started asking conversations as well. Then Koli would come in as well and ask a couple of questions. And I think we all relaxed. And as well for me, then I wasn't a host anymore. I was more of somebody who's just engaging in a conversation with some friends. It's almost like in a house as well, like in an indoor get together.
Yeah.
So I think more than anything, it wasn't being afraid of what people would think. I think it was more of just warming up to the conversation.
Is it also the pressure to get it right because of how sensitive?
Absolutely.
Part of the marginalized group, you don't want to miss opportunities to give the correct message, so you put pressure.
Absolutely, 100%. 100%. And as well, I was very cognizant of, what I've also heard from my mom in terms of, the LGBTQ. And gay people as well, like there's such a bad depiction, like we depicted in such a terrible way, a sexual way, as if we're just sexual beings who don't deserve to exist within society and to be loved.
On one of our teams we have a transgendered person, and before I met him, a colleague had sort of had a meeting with him, and she used the wrong pronoun, right?
Yeah.
And he was deeply offended and all of that. And I know my colleague, she did not mean it, right? It's just a misstep. It's kind of like even when someone is straight, I may say she, he, I may use the wrong pronoun because English is not my first language, that kind of thing. So it became a thing when she told me that story, that now I'm anticipating meeting him and I'm so worried of saying the wrong thing that it's going to be a barrier to our relationship because I don't know how much space he's willing to give for me to get it right, and also just to get to know him without being scared that what if I don't say the best thing? What if my views on certain things, Chimamanda as an example, on trans women and all those things, and it was a shutdown, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like for me, the conversations are almost scripted in that I'm gonna rehearse. If you put me on a panel and you ask me to interview on transgender issues and that kind of thing, I'm gonna rehearse, I'm gonna find out what it is that's acceptable, not acceptable, but I'd be so scared to connect on a level that I'm used to connecting with everyone because the offense is so deep, understandably so. But at the same time, like we're talking about unlearning. This wasn't a thing when we were in high school, when we were in varsity, and when, you know, we are all learning the new language that I can imagine for people that produce a show like you, that you want to give the right information and the right perspective. Other people in your community are watching. So it's like they're going to say, you got that wrong. You didn't represent this part, where this was lacking, and it's kind of like it's one conversation. We can't do it all.
I agree.
So I just wanted to link back to what you said earlier about how, you know, people who are part of the LGBTIQA plus communities are so stigmatized. And I want to link that back to our first discussion, which was about activism. And for all viewers who are watching who've got friends who are part of those communities, you need to every day be an accomplice to your friend. Whether that means, and I'm really privileged that we have our friendship, whether that means inviting your friend over to come have dinner with you. Last year, Facebook, and the year before, I invited everyone to come and have Christmas lunch with me and my family. Because I understand that for everyone, and Christmas is not enjoyable for everyone. Because some families have shunned their kids because of their sexuality. So you need to actively make steps so that you can be an accomplice. There's a colleague of mine at work, and she found out that her sister is a lesbian, and she was carrying around a lot of hatred and anger. And I remember she even referred to her sister's partner as it.
Oh my!
And if I had not said anything, I would have not been an accomplice to that. And I had to sit her down, also understanding power dynamics, and just say, okay, let's talk about this. Why does this make you uncomfortable? But she's still your sister, so why are you not talking to her? And why are you shunning her? So let's.
Why a visceral reaction?
Family complexities, but it's also because of it was tough because we come from very different contexts. So it was just trying to help her understand, but also being kind in my approach. And I can see her learning and unlearning slowly. So I can see her making a lot less homophobic comments than she made before, because now I'll just look at her or hold her accountable. So it's about making that everyday decision and also being bold in your decisions. There's many churches which I've left because of the fact that they have been very homophobic. The church I go to now is one that preaches such openness and honesty, and that you're fearfully and wonderfully made. And I'm loving it because I'm like, this is what I believe in. So you have to actively make those decisions.
So what's the name of that church? I just want to ask.
Grace Point.
Grace Point.
I just want to ask.
I had it just sounded very
I was plugging.
I had a huge argument with somebody in the past, well, not even a couple of weeks ago, about exactly the church in this community. I don't know if you've touched on it in the previous session, or maybe you should do a follow-up session, because it's a big topic. We did a small research on this last year, and then there's another one coming up this year. But maybe I want to hear from you, because it goes back to being educated by someone who is in that community for me. Exactly, because I remember last year I asked one of the students if I should call them a he or she, and then he said to me, you know what, it's preference. I would want you to call me a she.
Wait, one of your students who's a
student at work.
What gender are they?
It's a
gay.
That's even I was going to say my question.
Okay.
Yeah, he's gay, and
he
wants to be referred to as she.
Okay.
He wants them.
Yeah, you see. And then I said, okay, so I asked him, I said, so I can't use this now
quickly, Jackson,
with the next person, sorry. And then he said to me, it's preference. You have to now ask that person what they prefer. So I'm thinking we need more engagement, this type of shows, for people to understand, because I think the biggest thing here is we not understanding. That's it. But the biggest fight that I had was with churches which will refuse to marry gay communities.
It's not just churches, it's actually marriage offices, and that's what the LGBT community is now actually fighting. Marriage offices apparently are given the, you can correct me, but the
family law.
Oh yes, not sure. But apparently they can choose whether or not they want to marry gay couples, or just they can choose to excuse themselves.
Yeah.
And I found that problematic, but we'll have to unpack that in another conversation.
Definitely
I don't think that we've touched on this as much as I did want to, because I wanted to go into the microaggressions, and I didn't want to just focus on gay black men, because you guys also have some kind of privilege. There's also transgender, we've also got lesbians. I mean, there's a whole range of topics that we can unpack within that conversation.
Absolutely.
So I didn't want people to think that we're only focusing on gay men, because gay men also have some kind of privilege.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's such a wide conversation as well. It's a conversation that we'll continue with. Fortunately, this conversation needs to wrap up as really good and educational as it was, emotional in some parts. I think it's a conversation that we will carry on with, and we want you guys to be a part of it. We just want to thank the media company who's been working with us. This is our last episode for this season. I want to thank Kuyasha Media. Kuyasha Media has been great in these recordings. We've been doing this together. Make sure that you follow them. Pineapple SA, who basically given us the space to have these type of conversation. It's our home, and we really, really appreciate them as well. And our team, the Young Catalyst team, Shakira, Kanya, Nwabisa, Godfrey, Tamagwini, and also people who are a part of our family, like Farai, people who've supported us as well, and obviously our panelists as well. We're so thankful for everybody who's been a part of this, and we will continue. This is not the end, it's just the final episode for this particular season. Make sure you continue to follow us, and thank you so much for all the support. We truly appreciate it. And hit us up at info@theyoungcatalyst.co.za if you want to email us about anything, if you want to join, and so forth.
Bye.
Just wait, guys.